My name is Jocelyn. My surname is Pelagia. So if you have been looking at your schedule and thinking, I don't know what this teacher, I don't know how to say this. Who is this? What? How do I? Just know I'm fully aware my name is a mouthful. It's very difficult for a lot of folks. So don't even worry about the Pelagia unless you are very formal and you would like to call me Mrs. Pelagia. That's just fine. But in our communications with each other, Jocelyn works for me. And if Jocelyn is still makes you go, a lot of people call me Joss. So you could totally call me Joss. And if that's still, you're like, you just call me J. Could you call me J? Yeah. Anyhow, hi, I'm going to be your teacher. I love world literature. I love online teaching. So I am super excited about this class. A few things. If you have not yet gotten the textbooks, you're going to want to do that. So there are, in fact, 3 textbooks. We will read pretty much this whole book. This is a bunch of short stories, one world. And the bookstore has these books, by the way. If you want to shop around, see if you can find it cheaper somewhere, you're totally free to look online and order them. But by week 2 of the class, we will be using stories from this book, okay? Some of them can be found online. I think for the week 2 stories, only one of them can be found online. So if you can get a hustle in your book buying, that's going to be to your advantage, all right? What we'll do in terms of the structure of the class is we will spend the first 6 weeks, I think, reading stories from that book. Then, just when you're thinking about getting bored because it's midterm, we're going to switch and read this graphic novel for a couple of weeks, Persepolis, okay? So you're going to want to get a copy of this. Just know that there are 2 parts to Persepolis. We are only reading part 1, so you only need to buy part 1. She then later wrote a sequel that was part 2. Some publishers then published the 2 parts together. You won't be mad if by mistake you buy the one with both parts, because then you get a more complete story. But in terms of the assignments for this class, you just need the part 1. And then we will go back and read more stories from that short story book for a few more weeks. And then at the end of the semester, when you're thinking, oh my God, is it over yet? I can't take it anymore. We're going to switch and read a novel for 3 weeks. It's called A Burning, sorry if you didn't see it. So it's fully possible that you could get those novels from the library when you need them. You definitely can get them as a book rental or as an ebook. Audiobooks count as reading, so if you like an audiobook, get an audiobook, okay? What do we need to know? All right, so the one thing I really wanted to explain for sure is the grading in this class might be a tidge different than you are used to. It's not strictly traditional grading. Let me tell you a little story. Okay, so when I was in high school, I took honors physics because I thought I'm a smart kid. I want to go to a good college. I took honors physics. This was in the 80s. My physics teacher had been an artillery sergeant in the Korean War in the 1950s and lost a lot of his hearing. So he was tough and you had to shout at him and he shouted at you. And none of that interpersonally was particularly good for my sensitive soul. So also, there's the part where I really don't understand physics. To me, it's like speaking magic. It's like, what? Okay, torque, what? Okay. So I just made sure I got in a good lab group and with a guy named Bradley who's really got physics. And I was like, whatever Bradley says, we're going to put down the paper. I barely squeaked through that class. Then, because I am slow to learn, when I went to college and I had to have a certain number of science credits to graduate, I thought to myself, I've taken physics before. They have this class that's basically for like humanities majors that's called Physics for Poets. And I was like, I don't really love poetry, incidentally, but so I was basically like, I am going to take physics for poets. I'm going to get my 3 credits. It's going to be beautiful. Y'all, I was so terrible in that class. So I tried to do the problems. I couldn't do them. So I was like, I shall use my resources. I am going to go to like this mentor group where we discuss things and we work on it together. I would go and I would just write down anything I could get from the group. I never understood it, but I was like, I guess maybe this would be an answer to the problem. First test comes around, big F on it when it comes back. Not used to getting Fs on tests. I think I got a 54. How I got those 54 points, I still don't know. So then I continued like going to discussion groups. On the final exam, I think I got a D. I had at that point changed, we had a pass fail option. I was like, I can't take this class for a grade. So I took it pass fail, and you had to get like a D minus, and I barely squeaked it. I barely squeaked it. And the thing is, I read all the stuff, I did all the work, I took the tests, I tried my best. In this brain, I am never gonna get physics. I can try, I can even be interested, but it's not in my wiring. And I understand for a lot of you, when you're taking something like a literature class in college, it's maybe because it's required, because you need the credits towards a certain thing for your diploma. And it might not be that you are fired by the passion of 1,000 suns and you are dying to take a lit class. Of course, on the other hand, I realize a lot of you might be like, I love language, I love reading, I love literature, and we got room for all of y'all in a class like this. But with traditional grading, it tends to advantage people who come into the class either already with a strong foundation in the content area, or people who are good somehow at just like sliding through the work and making it seem effortless, even if they aren't really into it. They're like, I got this, I can do it. Anyhow, traditional grading does not acknowledge the fact that we all come into this classroom with different backgrounds, experiences, abilities. We have many students who are, say recent immigrants, who have good English. I mean, way better than most of us would be in a second language, but still, the reading, the writing, all of that is much more laborious, and it's much harder to reach that weird thing called like perfection. By the way, if you can hear a big train going by right now, hello, I live in Lakeside. So I just think when we think of people's backgrounds, when we think of the preparation, if you didn't grow up in a house that was full of books and reading, and you come into a class like this, it can seem like a lot. And it can be like, you might be trying as hard as you can, and still you're like, but what does this lady want? What do I have to do to get the grade I want? And I mean, I could go into a lot more detail, but I do tend to go on, so I'll just shut up now. So anyhow, there is a new kind of grading model that is emerging more and more, and it is meant to bring more equity to the classroom so that every single student who enters the class has an equal chance at success. We also want to acknowledge that some folks have 4 kids and a full-time job, or I've had people who do property management and they have properties, they manage like 26 properties across 2 states or whatever, and are still trying to get a college degree. So how do we say to that person, we can make it possible for you to get through this class with a passing grade, and you don't have to feel like you somehow are a failure if you have some weeks where it ain't so great. So this new kind of emerging model that's meant to promote equity is we're gonna do kind of a blend of a contract-based grading and labor-based grading. The contract idea in this class just means for us, you are agreeing or deciding, I will do X amount of labor to get the grade I want. So the emphasis no longer is on that weird nebulous thing called quality. Like, I've read 10,000 discussion posts. I know a good one when I see it. It's actually very hard for me to articulate to you why one post is so much stronger than another. Yeah, I can to a certain extent, but I think really it can be difficult for me to communicate what I feel and see in terms of my grading to you, and you can feel bewildered, like, why did I get an A? I don't know. I got lucky that week. How come I got a 7 out of 10 on this? She tried to tell me, I still don't understand what I should have done differently. It can be so bewildering. So I'm attempting to make it clearer for everyone by adopting this labor-based. You can contract through the amount of labor that you do to get the score that you want each week, provided, of course, that you are putting in reasonable effort and that the work you're doing is at least at college level, like a very base foundational college level. So I think one thing also that's happened is grade inflation. We think if we don't get an A, then that means you failed. If a B feels like, and that kind of thinking is such nonsense. I mean, if you think about what grades are really supposed to be, if you do everything you're supposed to do and you do it well, that's a C. If you do everything you're supposed to do and a little bit above and beyond, you got a little sparkle, a little splash, that's a B. If you do everything you're supposed to do, maybe even more than you're supposed to do, and if you do it with something that feels like, wow, that's an A. But we have come to think, I have to have an A, I have to have straight A's, I have to have a 4.0, I have to have this, I have to have that. And so then, you get wound up in it, and then that ends up with my inbox and my email being full of, but I have to have an A. And particularly the last week of the semester, it's insane. Students who have missed a lot of work or who haven't done so well on things suddenly magically want to go back and redo the whole semester. It's stressful for everyone. So here's what we're doing in this class. If you are like, I am here for the credits and I'm about the content, and if you're like, I'm good with a C, every single week I tell you what you need to do to get a C. And basically it's when we do a discussion, you write one good post that hits the word count, and that is enough. And it has to be college level. It can't just be absolute, like, I don't care nonsense. You have to put a little something into it. But if it is reasonable and it's like, yes, thank you, then you get a 7.5 in the grade book out of 10 that week. If you are thinking, no, I'm going to go for a B, then you will do, and it's pretty much the same for every week. I tell you every week, but you'll do one original post in response to the story, 300 to 500 words, and you'll do one reply to a classmate of at least 150 words. So you are getting points and you are getting credit for the amount of labor that you put into your assignments. If you want an A, you do a bit more. So you do an original post for the story and you do 2 replies, each at least 150 words to your classmates. So if you are willing to do more work, if you can find the time and the gumption to do more work, you will get the A. So basically you can get either a 7.5, an 8.5, or a 9.5 out of 10 in the grade book every week. It could be some weeks you are like, I'm not feeling it this week. I'm just going to do the one post and call it good. And there might be other weeks where you're like, I've only been doing one post for a whole bunch of weeks, but now I'm going to try and see if I can boost things, and I'm going to start doing a bit more labor. So it's all explained every week. You don't have to track all this right now. But the hope is that you understand you are in charge of getting the grade you want. And if you do an assignment, if you write a post and I think, it's really not there, I will say to you, you have an opportunity to revise and resubmit this, and then you'll get the score that you're aiming for. Right now it's not quite there, and here's some things you could do to make it better. So once you do that, you do the revise and resubmit, you get the score. 3 points in the semester. You can have late passes. So if you our weekly deadline is Sunday at 10 p.m. I know a lot of instructors have it at midnight on Sunday. That's because they go to bed at a reasonable hour and they just get up Monday and do the grading. I, however, am a night owl freak. And so I will grade as much as I can, if not everything, on Sunday night. So if I can get it in by 10, I can stay up for some hours and try and plow through the grading. So just keep in mind, we have a slightly different deadline that you might have in some classes. So if you cannot hit that deadline, you have 3 late passes, 3 times in the semester where you can go ahead and still do the work, so you can still do the discussion posts, so long as you've got them completed and in place within 48 hours of the deadline. So our deadline is Sunday at 10 p.m. You would have until Tuesday at 10 p.m. to get those missing posts done. I will still grade them according to the amount of labor that you have done. So 3 times, you get the late passes, no questions. Of course, I always love a good story. So if you want to, hit me in that little DMs in D2L, or if you want to email me and be like, you would not believe how this raccoon ate my book, then go right ahead. But really, if 3 times, it's okay. And I will track how many times. I also know that sometimes you undergo a major life crisis where you are either mentally or physically out of commission for weeks. You're just kind of not okay in some way. For that reason, once in the semester, if you do hit a big wall in life, once in the semester, you can message me and give me a gimme, please. Give me a chance. Give me some more time. Give me, please. Give me. You can do that once in the semester. It cannot be during finals week. So we can't go back and redo everything during finals week, okay? But if we're in week 7 or week 10 and you're just kind of like maybe you have COVID, or maybe you're having a mental health crisis, whatever. If you communicate with me, I am rooting for you to get through this class and find style. I am always happy for us to make a plan and be like, okay, we're going to have you do this on this date and this on this date, and then you'll be all good. So you may use that gimme plea once in the semester. You might want to not use it the first week if you don't have to. And also, please do not feel compelled to use the Gimme Plea. Ideally, in an ideal world, it makes my life much easier as someone who has 125 to 150 students who are all submitting multiple things every week. It makes my life so much easier if you can just do the work when it's due in the spirit that we all intend it to be done. That's just great. So if you could please, if you don't have to use the Gimme I plead with you to please not use it. And if you don't have to use any late passes, that's fantastic too. But I just want you to know there's a little wiggle room built in. And more than anything, if you're having a problem, just tell me, all right? So like a little communication can go a long way. So you just let me know what's up at any point. Other than that, I would say get out there, get your books. You might want to look over the due dates overview, the syllabus, all that kind of stuff. If you go to the content page and you look at the table of contents, you will see that everything for every week is in there. There will be a weekly announcement that greets you when you enter the class, and it tells you what you're doing that week. It gives you a few comments or thoughts that I might have on the reading. So yeah, let's have a good semester, okay, friends? I'm glad you're here.